Let's meet to order. Join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, everyone, thanks for coming. Comments and statements from the public.
Craig Dutra, a member of the Board of Selectmen. I happen to be married to one of the members of the committee. I was surprised to read into this morning's Standard Times that the board had voted to, or apparently had agreed to appoint an interim superintendent following the announcement that Superintendent Cawley was going on a paid leave. And I'm wondering, where was that meeting held and when?
Well, there was no appointment of an interim.
So how did you announce that in the paper this morning?
I announced that?
Yes, you did.
Well, we haven't done that, Craig. If I'm quoted as saying that, it's incorrect.
So you're saying the reporter quoted you incorrectly?
I didn't say that, Craig. We have not done that.
Just point of information, it says, and I just saw this recently, an acting head of the district.
One would think that maybe
I think
three members of the committee were acting outside of posted meetings in violation of the open meeting law to deliberate to make an appointment tonight. That's what I concurred and concluded from that statement.
I was just letting you know what the paper actually says, Craig.
No, read the Standard Time story.
Okay.
Craig, this meeting was to basically discuss and approve administrative structure of the Westport School Committee. The plan is to discuss.
You were quoted in this morning's Standard Times.
Are
you denying the quote or affirming the quote?
I haven't seen the quote, Craig. I haven't seen the quote. No one has
Is that
met.
today's paper?
Tony, we've got people coming in. We need to move into a bigger room. This is ridiculous.
We're fine.
You're not fine. You're repressing public input. You schedule a meeting in this room deliberately so you can go into executive session to do what you wanted to do last week. You normally meet out there. You're repressing public input. And you know, Michael Sullivan last night took up 15 minutes of my meeting saying nothing about construction projects at the middle school. So I'm going to take up 15 minutes of this meeting talking about very important business. You guys last week acted for no reason at all to put a superintendent of schools on paid administrative leave for no apparent reason. You're going to cost us hundreds of thousands of dollars of money. And tonight, you're going to vote in secret session to negotiate a contract which will lead to hiring additional people to do things that were totally unnecessary for this district. And I, for one, am totally opposed to what you're doing. And I am not alone.
Thank you. Anybody else?
As a parent and resident of Westport, I was very concerned.
Nancy, statement.
Oh, I'm sorry, Nancy Rio. As a parent and resident of Westport, I was very concerned with the recent decision to place Dr. Cawley on leave. And as a result, I felt like I was compelled to share my concerns with you and seek some clarification on this issue. I regularly attend meetings, and looking back on the agendas way back until August, until most recently, in the last meeting, there's been several executive sessions called with various contract issues with non-union members as well as union members. I know that there might have been some concerns, but working in an education field and just in the regular professional world, every employee is supposed to be afforded an opportunity to rectify any issues that might arise with the support of their employer. And if they feel that the progress remains unsatisfactory, then they elect the option of not renewing their contract. That's just my understanding of basics. Dr. Cawley assumed many responsibilities. He's led our district 2 schools into accreditation. He received a positive review from an audit. And as an observer, I felt that he was very collaborative with the board and with the many changes that have been requested of him. So I'm very concerned with this, that this decision is going to have a negative impact on our district, for our staff, who's already endured many personnel changes, for our children, for our families in their learning environment. And if the assistant superintendent is placed in the interim, which I'm sure she'll do a wonderful job, this is especially concerning to me because her duties are going to be neglected. This is a critical time for improving achievement, whether in the classroom, MCAS, PARC. We have much to do, and this is an unneeded distraction. So I would like the board to explain to us, as I'm sure many of us are concerned and wondering, how is it beneficial for a superintendent to be placed on paid leave in a district that spends less money than the recommended average for each student, that receives supplemental funding from their parents, whether it's fees, whether it's donations, from organizations, funding programs and materials, and not receiving the necessary funding for a school district to run? I feel that we're owed an explanation, and to me, this decision was fiscally irresponsible. Thank you.
Okay, I'll take a step. Well, I think people are making many assumptions. The issue in question is a personal matter. Pursuant to Mass General Law, Section 4, Mass General Law, Chapter 4, Section 4, Clause 26, all personal information is exempt from disclosure as a public record unless otherwise the supervisor of public records determines otherwise. I will continue to simply state that the issue is a personal matter, and I cannot comment any further. Caroline?
Go ahead.
Then you.
I'm Noel Breon. I have 2 children in the school system. I think as just a parent here, it seems like a fiscally irresponsible decision that you all made just out of the clear blue based on, there's a lot of rumors going around on why it happened, and then to hide it from the taxpayers because you're using our money to pay him to be off for 8.5 months. So I'm estimating around $100,000. That's fiscally irresponsible. If you are to put someone else in that place, be it the acting superintendent at this moment, then you're going to end up paying her more. You're going to have to buy back all of his vacation days and his sick leave. So I'm estimating that this is around $200,000. And as Nancy spoke, she said, we don't have the money. I moved here last year, and this is a broke town. When it comes to the school system, you're begging for money on a daily basis. You can't pay for anything. What the children have is extremely limited. And then a decision like this is made, seemingly, to people in this town because people didn't like someone, not because it was wrongdoing on his part. If there was wrongdoing on his part, great, let's all hear about it. Let's hear what he did wrong. But to disguise it as a personal matter and tell us that you can't tell us anything about it until after the fact, because it will become a public record, because it's tax dollars that are used for this hush money, negotiated settlement, whatever you want to call it. Those are tax dollars. And the state has already set a precedent, right, ma'am, with your case in Ashland. After the fact, after you were let go, when no one was told exactly what the settlement was, the state came back and told us what it was. So there is precedent there that this is public information because it is taxpayer dollars.
Thank you. Caroline?
I agree with the comments of the community that this is an exceedingly fiscally irresponsible move to have taken.
Melissa?
I want to thank you both for your concerns. And as the newest member of the school committee, I just want to say that things are very different when you're sitting in this seat and you're privy to information that you're not. And I am not able to talk about that because of the law that Tony referenced. I can't. It's not that I want to hide anything. It's not that I want to hush something, but when it's personal issues, we just can't. So I want to say that the decisions that I make, that we make, are for the best interest of our school district and our students. our number one priority is our students. I wouldn't have ran for election had I not wanted to do what was in the best interest of our students and our district. And we really need to move ahead and work as a team, collectively, to make the best school system for our students. And I'm sorry, I honestly am, that I can't provide you with more information. But by law, I just can't. So I thank you for your concern, and I hear it. And if I could, I would more than happily tell you. I just can't. So I'm sorry, and I hope that you will continue to work with us, because we need parents like you, community members like you that care for our schools to continue to move us in the right direction.
Thank you.
Hi, Diane Barron.
Hi.
Now we move forward. So I'm assuming that you have had some thoughts about how you're going to deal with the amount of money now that you're paying out. What programs are going to be cut? Will there be other faculty cut, or how are you going to move forward? You're going to ask the town for more money to pay for the money that now is not available?
Well, again, I think there's a few assumptions there, and I know myself and the committee will do what we need to do to get by, and we'll continue to
I would
move
like a
forward.
more specific answer.
Well,
You
I
must have
can't.
had some thoughts about how, I mean, you're making this
Oh, yeah,
decision that has
if you're
fiscal.
asking, well, you're making assumptions. You're making assumptions that I
Tell
can't
me,
comment.
tell me what assumptions I'm making.
Melissa?
So I think this evening, what we're planning to do is to talk about the administrative structure, and then moving forward, we're going to get those pieces together. So I think that those are very important and good questions, and I want to provide you with those answers, but what we first have to do is figure out our administrative structure, and then once we do that, you know, we can work together to form a budget, and if there are any budget changes or what we need to do, we're strategically going to move forward, not just make things up as we go along.
But in the process of...
Tony, would you mind when, thank you.
May I continue? Okay. I just want to, I think it would be helpful, since you can't tell us what happened, if you could tell us the process by which things happened and how you deliberated this decision, because I think it just struck everybody as something out of the blue. So if there was a more deliberative aspect to this, I think that would be helpful to people to understand. When you were thinking about firing the superintendent, did you first come up with, well, if we do that, then X is going to follow from that, and how are we going to prepare for X?
Again, I think you're making some assumptions there that I just can't comment on. I mean, as far as the district moving forward, this meeting was called to basically announce publicly that Dr. Colley is on leave of absence, and that Dr. Dargan will be the acting superintendent until such time the school committee decides on where to go from there. That's what this meeting was called for. Michael?
And again, I just wanted to add to Tony's last comment, that is by reference to our Westport school policy. In the absence of the superintendent, the assistant superintendent is the person in charge of the district on a day-to-day basis. So I would refer you to our policy handbook. In the case of making comments on past meetings, I certainly have no regrets for any decisions I've made in the past 5 years. They've all been
Better than most of us, I would say.
they've all been student-centric, and will continue to be. We're looking at solutions to bring the district forward, and we'll continue to make decisions that the committee as a whole agrees on.
The reality is the decision was made in a vacuum, as you people have said. I can't go into the specifics of what was discussed, but it was made in a vacuum without a plan and without consideration of the budgetary impact that it is going to have on this district, which is at a very vulnerable position. We lost our technology director. We got a vacuum in technology right now. the superintendent was the business manager, we have a vacuum in the business fiscal side, we're in the middle of starting to do budgetary stuff. This is a disaster that just occurred, a complete and absolute disaster. And you are right to ask questions and be upset, because this should not have happened.
So, rather than make it seem like the sky is falling, I think what we need to do is move forward. Things happen. We don't make decisions in a vacuum. At least I know that I don't make decisions in a vacuum. And I think moving forward, together, we can strategically do this as a team. So,
I don't intend to do anything that would legitimize any of the actions that led us here
Dr.
tonight.
Duggan, how are we with the technology? How's that moving?
We've just recently hired a technology integration specialist. He'll start with us on Monday. Bob and Ed are moving forward, so those positions are falling into play.
Christine Sylvia, and I'd just like to say that Dr. Colley, when he was in here, there were decisions that were made that parents liked. There were decisions that were made that parents didn't like. I was one of them. Transparency was his word. This is less than transparency. There were comments made in the paper by Dr. Colley which shows that this wasn't just a personal issue. And as the taxpayers and the people who vote for our town and our school committee has a right to know what is going on in the system that we are entrusting our children's education with. So yes, things are being done in a vacuum, and there's no transparency with what is going on here, and it's not right. There may not be a lot of people here tonight, but there are a lot of people who want answers as to what is going on in our school district to guide our children, to guide our tax dollars. There are some of us that have been in this town and have lived nowhere else, and we keep our children here for a reason, and we deserve to have respect, and we deserve to be told the truth.
Thank you.
Just point of information, what Tony read as far as the mass law, it is a personnel matter, not personal matter. It's a personnel matter and protected under the, according to mass law, and we're abiding by
We still have a
that.
right to know.
Absolutely, and that right will be honored.
It will be honored after people make decisions that others don't know about. And that's not right.
Anything else? Motion to adjourn to executive?
Oh, we didn't even go into
The structure.
our actual agenda piece.
Well, I mean, basically, it was to...
No,
Okay.
because I was holding my comments for
No, no,
when we
we-
moved to the action piece, because that's supposed to be comments from the public.
Good. All right, so action agenda, discuss and approve administrative structure of the Westport Community Schools. Michelle?
First of all, I received a couple of phone calls this morning alerting me to that article that I think you have in front of you. And I have to say, I was surprised to see in the newspaper your comment, at least how it was quoted, as the school committee will appoint Assistant Superintendent Ann Dargan as the acting head of the district tonight, Chair Antonio Viveros said. While I understand our policy states that in the absence of the superintendent, the assistant superintendent takes over, to me that doesn't mean we have to act on it. To me that means she automatically has taken the reins until we decide on what we want to do.
Nothing more than that.
I understand, but it's the perception. And it's the perception that I did not vote on anything, and that's what I woke up to this morning. I am disappointed that we didn't put together a press release before this weekend. It hit the papers. People didn't know what was going on. And I've said it before, and I know some of this has been in the papers through different comments, or people are piecing certain things together, but I still don't know. I'm still waiting for a plan. And it is my job as a school committee member to make decisions based on what those plans are. I still have great concerns about the fiscal responsibility of paying somebody to stay home. We lose productivity, and that's, whether we can do this for the same monies or not, we're still losing productivity for 9 months. As somebody sits somewhere else, and I'm only going by comments in the newspaper today, and forwards his own education on our time, in our dime, so so that he can go and work somewhere else. And I have a problem with that.
Anybody else?
Yeah, as we're discussing the agenda item, I'm really not sure on anyone forwarding their education. I'm getting
It's in there.
in
It
where?
says it's in that article. It says he's going to take this time to work on furthering his knowledge and blah, blah, blah.
Okay.
It's in there.
As I said, I got this just
I-
on my way here today. But that aside, I thought that this meeting was appropriate when I got the agenda because we're discussing the district as it stands today. And I think it is an appropriate meeting because we have a lot of people that have some questions. So I would like to discuss the administrative structure. We talked a bit about these vacuums. We have a technology team that we put in place in the past month, and we're planning to go forward. And the end result of that new structure is a reduction in our technology line item budget. And we can go over that. But in terms of administratively, we want to adjust our organizational chart to reflect those changes, and it will have a financial implication, and we'll look at that. That was well vetted. We've had multiple meetings on that position, and came up with a solution. So that piece of the administrative organizational chart that we have will be updated. And I saw this meeting as an appropriate time to address the person overseeing the day-to-day activities of the Westport Community Schools. Not only for everyone in the community to know who's leading the day-to-day operations. We don't do that. And I thought it was important to have this meeting, so thank you, Tony.
Melissa?
Do you think, I'd like to ask Ann about Dr. Dargan to provide maybe a background of what she foresees, moving forward, or do we, at this point, would we make a motion to, or
There's no need for a motion,
okay.
but you could certainly ask
I have a
Dr.
question.
So Dr. Dargan, based on this week, and you've been acting as superintendent, how have things been going for you? Could you speak a little bit about, you mentioned the technology, we've hired the technology people. Is there anything additional that has happened in the last few days that can be shared?
Just a little bit of an update. I did have the opportunity to meet with the town manager, Jack Healy, as well as the business manager, Steve Lombard, today to start to put together a budget for the school committee and for the community. So we've been looking, very carefully at the forecasting as well. The administrators and I are getting together tomorrow, but clearly we have a strong, supportive administrative team and a good relationship with the association. And my feeling is that it's business as usual, and that our staff will continue to do the best that they possibly can.
Do you feel like there's any specific issues that we should be made aware of at this point? I know it's very early, but
Nothing that I've uncovered in the last couple of months.
So who's doing the curriculum piece? Who's overseeing the curriculum piece?
I've been working on the
You.
curriculum.
And who's overseeing the business piece?
I've been working on the business.
And who's overseeing the technology piece?
The technology department right now is pretty much running the technology department. So
Who's
Bob,
doing the data piece that we had such great concerns about pushing reports up to Boston?
Dr. Colley hired Mickey Fredericks to work on that, and she's been working with the woman in
And who-
Boston.
Who does she report to?
She reports to Melissa Souza in the business office.
And what's Melissa Souza's position?
The executive assistant to the business manager, I believe.
Okay. But you're the business manager.
Not at this point,
But you're overseeing the business.
at this point. But I'm not the business manager.
So prior to Friday, you were just doing the curriculum.
Correct.
And now you have 2 more jobs.
I was working with curriculum and technology up until last Friday, yes.
And you don't see the vacuum? Wow.
I have a
Michelle?
point of information I'm concerned. Is this meeting being recorded and
Yes.
televised? Nobody's using the microphone.
You guys
I don't know
can't
how
hear.
anybody can hear. It would be really helpful maybe if you move them down.
These little black ones are mics
Oh,
also.
These are the
okay,
mics.
good, thank you. That's my question was answered.
I had looked myself.
Thank you, Eileen.
Michelle?
I actually had some similar questions. First of all, through the chair, I have a question for Michael, just because you referenced the technology, and that is a reduction in our technology budget. That wasn't how I remembered any of those discussions. We were given a dollar amount, and if I remember correctly, we were pushing that dollar amount beyond what even Dr. Colley was recommending for a technology budget. So I don't see that as being a reduction in technology budget, but perhaps I misunderstood. And you kind of brought up the piece that I was, we also had superintendent, but Dr. Colley was our business manager. I don't know, I'm still waiting for an understanding of how this stuff is going to play out. And certainly, you just don't have enough hours in the day, even if you were superwoman, to be the curriculum person and the business person. It's just not.
The superintendent.
And the superintendent. It is just not possible. So we're looking at potentially hiring somebody to fill that slot as well. And the hiring of the data person, that was new to me. I had no idea. That's the first I heard, and I'm not even sure right now how I want to comment on that, but yeah.
My understanding when we first brought the data person on board, the plan was changed from the recommendation of our previous technology director, was that that person was going to work with Ann part-time. Well, that can't happen anymore. What does Melissa know about the data piece pushing it forward? Melissa was never mentioned as the person who was going to take charge of the data person pushing reports to Boston. And I voiced great concern that we were taking the exiting technology directors and Dr. Colley's plan and modifying it. And I said, I'm really worried that the data piece is going to fall by the wayside. Now we got a bigger hole we got to fill. And who supervises who is a huge issue because of a potential conflict.
Again, I'll repeat that I thought today's meeting was an excellent idea to have the special meeting to address.
It needs to be done, you're right.
To address what the structure is. In terms of vacuum, we had a proposal put forward to create a new administrative position. As you know, our role as school committee members creates new positions. We shot down that plan, which, as you've indicated, came from an exit interview with a former employee. Now, as much as I appreciate good input, I don't plan to build this school system going forward based on exit interviews. I plan to respond to good, solid information that can create the type direction we want to continue. And again, the data administrative position, we decided not to hire. We restructured the technology department as a team approach, which is seen due to the integration of technology into the classroom. That's how we've already handled the data piece. I don't see it as new. And going forward, today's meeting was to address, as it says, the administrative structure. So that's the data piece. The business manager piece, we're in total agreement. I believe we have to evaluate the business model that we've had over the past few years and pay better attention to our business, office, and whatever support's needed there. That's one of the areas on the administrative structure, certainly.
Tony, through the chair, I'd like to ask Dr. Doggin a question. Do you have, as another member has mentioned, obviously one person can't do everything. Have you thought about the resources within the district to be able to have some assistance within either our curriculum and/or our finance budget? Could you share that with us?
Yeah, our administrative team, our building principals and our assistant principals are really truly the instructional leaders anyway too as well. The plan is mapped out, the curriculum for the year, the professional development has already been planned and mapped out. We took 3 days in August with the staff to work on district-determined measures as well as curriculum mapping. And so next Tuesday afternoon, an early release, the teachers have their task at hand, what needs to already be accomplished. So much of that is already, the structural piece has been put in place. This, administrators, the principals, the assistant principals, and I, through administrative meetings, through meetings at the building level, we continue to talk and work about that. That's our work. That's our job, raising student achievement anyway. So I have no doubt that that work will be able to continue.
Now, what about in regards to the finance?
I'm not
budget?
certified as a school business official. I am in a licensure program for that, where they have assigned a mentor to me for 300 hours. So I expect that that will be some help and support and assistance. However, I am not certified as a school business official.
Okay, thank you.
What's that costing us? That licensure program that you are now in? Because we don't have a business manager.
It's under professional development.
It's
so
not costing us anything?
No, it was through a grant. So the program itself was about $5,000.
Yeah, actually, I actually want to, and I'm sorry that I keep harping on this, but again, my memory was that when we discussed the data piece, we were going to, you had a half-time secretary. That piece was going to be made full-time. The secretary would work half-time for you and the other half-time with you on the data piece. That isn't what I'm seeing at this point. This is different than what we discussed.
Dr. Colley changed that before he left.
Well, he's not here to defend it, so I don't know that he didn't. I'm not suggesting that, but somebody changed something. And now we're finding out, and now for reasons that you understand, you cannot work with this person. So this kind of stuff is, I guess, what's frustrating.
Tony?
And who hired the new data?
Dr. Colley.
Melissa?
I was just going to ask that those decisions were made prior to Dr. Colley leaving, is that correct?
I feel like I'm in a movie, and this is all ready to go. I have to tell you.
Tony, I also want to clarify that the proposal with regard to technology that was made by the technology director, she was still here when that proposal was presented. She wasn't an ex-employee. She was still here.
She was out that day, though.
So, to suggest that we were using a proposal of an ex-employee is frankly not true.
No, I referenced that as the
It wasn't an
Contemporaries.
exit interview.
Just as a point of clarification, and just so I make sure that I know, the recommendation was made to move forward in this manner by the assistant superintendent and at the time another person within the technology department who has been with our system for 9 or so years. So the decision to move in the direction we moved was utilizing a technology person who's been in our district for a very long time and the assistant superintendent. So is that?
And Dr. Colley?
No, we ignored what Dr. Colley recommended because the assistant superintendent and the tech person put a different proposal. The tech director and the superintendent had a different proposal. And we didn't take their proposal, or at least the majority decided not to take that proposal. They moved forward a different proposal. And I had huge reservations about that. And I voiced them that night. And I have bigger reservations about the course this district is going to take with one less person who was doing 2 jobs plus human resources. Who's going to do human resources? He did human resources as well whenever there was an FMLA issue, when there was leave issues, when there were sick issues. All those came to his desk.
This person does too.
Who's going to do that now? You going to do that too? Wow, you got a lot on your plate, Dr. Dargan. Oh my goodness, you're not getting any sleep anytime soon. This is irresponsible, completely irresponsible.
Anything else? Motion to adjourn?
Adjourn to what?
Aren't you taking
Where's
a
the
vote on
plan?
something?
Where's the plan? Where's the plan? I haven't seen a plan. What's the different structure? Can someone diagram the structure
I
that
have a
clearly
question.
somebody came up with?
The-
Clearly, it's been planned.
The executive session says we're going into contract negotiations with non-union personnel not to return, blah, blah, blah. So how can we go into contract negotiations when we haven't even approved an administrative structure, and how can we negotiate with somebody when it hasn't even really been decided what we're negotiating? And this is what I go back to. I feel like it was decided, regardless of what my vote is tonight, and I'm not in any way suggesting that you would not do a good job as a superintendent, so please don't take it that way.
Is a vote on anything, Michelle.
Tony, I'm not suggesting
Not what
that,
it says.
but I'm saying, how can we negotiate
It's an
with
action
somebody who's
agenda.
supposed to be an interim superintendent, who, when we haven't even made a vote, and we're gonna now negotiate a new salary for that person because,
I would just
I mean, what are we
caution the
doing?
committee that
Michelle,
we
you're
are,
making assumptions.
now I'm making.
Because we're the only ones in the dark.
assumptions.
Clearly, the other side of the table doesn't have to make assumptions. They're not in the dark.
No, there is no, there
The
is,
ma-
there
the
has
mass-
been no, we're gonna have the meeting.
The mass-
We're gonna talk about these issues.
So let's talk about it.
We are. in
We just
executive.
can't talk about
No, we can't
contract
talk about that in
negotiations.
executive.
Mike, then,
Doesn't the appointment have to be made in open session?
Yeah,
we're not
absolutely.
making an appointment. You guys wanna make an appointment?
Then what
Make a
are we
motion.
contract negotiating for?
if I could, I
Wow.
would caution the entire committee that there's a Mass General Law that's been referenced on personnel issues. The executive session, in accordance with the Mass General Law, has to be held in executive session. What we have is a contract that's in place that may or may not be impacted by these administrative changes, which apparently you're not in favor of.
Don't assume my vote one way or the other, but please just don't. It doesn't matter whether I
I'm
am
not
or
having
not.
a
Michael.
discussion, I'm saying that what we're going forward with is to discuss a contract that's in place, and we can't discuss that in open session.
I'm not suggesting
So
we
that-
do.
Why? We modified a contract 2 weeks ago in open
I'm
session.
addressing the entire committee that we have an executive that is bound to privacy through the Mass General Law. So I would caution us to discussing any aspects of that conversation. We're here now to discuss the administrative structure.
I'd like to see what it looks like, because I
I've
haven't
heard-
seen
I've heard
anything.
your input. I think this is an appropriate venue. We tend to agree with that. And I have no preconception on how it's going to look, how any of the changes, which are very few that I see, that are going to be made. So I'm not understanding your concern and what we're not doing. So make a motion.
I'm not making a motion. I want to know what the picture of who's running the district, because for the first time I hear Melissa is now supervising the data person that was supposed to be supervised by Dr. Dargan, who can't supervise that person. So I'm very confused. I am exceedingly confused.
And
I don't know what's going on. Can
Based
someone
on-
draw me the picture of how this is supposed to operate?
Based-
Because the decision that was made that led to today didn't do that. That plan was never made. There was no plan, and that's why we're here today. And you know what, sitting here, there is no plan. There's still not a plan. That's the problem. Unless the plan's in your heads. I'd like to see it diagrammed.
I just want
I would
to
Like
appreciate
many
that.
of
make a
you.
motion if I could. Motion takes precedent. I'd like to make a motion to, in accordance with policy, acknowledge Dr. Ann Dargan as the acting superintendent of the Westport Community Schools.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
No.
I think the word acknowledge is troubling, because you're appointing and not appointing. And so you're skirting responsibility, Mr. Sullivan. I happen to know something about the open meeting law, and I think you should, because as an elected official, you're responsible for reading the open meeting law and acknowledging that test with the public records people in Massachusetts. And I caution this committee to be careful about what you do in secret, what you do behind closed doors when you're not involving the full committee.
Correct, hold on.
What you're doing in the public sector. No, no.
Let's talk about secret meetings and,
Well, you made an announcement in the paper this morning, Tony.
about a secret meeting?
No, about the appointment that was going to be made tonight.
That you don't want to make now.
And now we're acknowledging the appointment.
Acknowledging
Well, yeah,
the
making the appointment, you're acknowledging the appointment.
That Ann was the acting superintendent. There was no...
You're skirting the issue.
I'm not skirting anything.
Yes, you are.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
I'm sorry.
From a fiscal standpoint, it seems pretty clear, based on your policies, which I haven't read, but I've heard you reiterate time and time again, that when the superintendent isn't here, the assistant superintendent steps up. Well, great. The assistant superintendent can step up and fill in for the next 8.5 months. No change in pay, just work a little bit harder, suck it up, drive on. That's what plenty of other organizations do. When you're the number 2 person, you got the weight of the world on your shoulders, and that's what happens. And I'm sorry, but whatever happened in your not secret meeting that led to Dr. Colley leaving for no apparent wrongdoing that we know of, then this is what happens. But there should be no additional money that's a burden to the taxpayers and to this school district simply because of whatever went on. You just have to work harder. People have to work harder. Lots of people do that. It's that simple. You don't have to change anything. You don't have to they just fill in, just like he was out sick because he's on paid leave.
Thank you.
Do you want to make the motion?
Andy Cottrell, Union President for the Westport Teachers Association. I don't know what the reference was into about a contract was being changed 2 weeks ago. I'm assuming the reference was into our contract. Our contract was not changed 2 weeks ago. I just wanted to state that for the record.
Thank you.
Motion to adjourn?
Second?
Melissa did.
Roll call vote. So we're going to adjourn into roll call.
Do a roll call vote
Roll call
in
vote.
executive session.
I, Melissa Pacheco.
Aye, Michael Sullivan.
No, Carolina Africano.
No.
Aye. Tony Viveras. Adjourn to executive session for contract negotiations with non-union personnel, not to return to open session. Thank you.